All right, everybody. Well, thank you all for coming today. It's a great opportunity for us to share a little bit about Cecil Fountain, who is our diversity program manager. We appreciate those of you who came back after her first presentation where we had kind of an introduction of her. But now we're just going to talk a little bit about things that we probably don't think about very much, which is the phrases and language that we use when we're communicating with people who may not be from the United States. There are lots of idioms and phrases that we use automatically, and believe me, I found myself using them all the time when Cecile and I were preparing. But it's just going to be kind of interesting to go through and be reminded that the things that we say sometimes don't make a whole lot of sense to somebody from another country who doesn't have the experience of knowing those phrases like we have grown up with. So I am going to step aside and ask Cecile to unmute herself, and I will mute myself so we don't have that overflow. Take it away, Cecile.
All right. So welcome, everyone. And thank you again for coming back to my presentation, given that last time I kept you way longer than I had anticipated. But I see you came back, so that's a good sign. I must be doing something good. So without further extension on the conversation, let's get started. So today we're talking about American idioms and abbreviation. And I'm gonna start by asking everyone to guess. So you're actually, I'm giving you permission to unmute yourself and guess what this abbreviation means.
It means abbreviation.
Abbreviation. Anybody else? Any other guesses? Going once? Going twice? Good job, Grandma. It is abbreviation. So, I thought it would be a little bit more complicated. However, I wanted to start with abbreviation because I'm only familiar with few of them, not many of them. And this was one that I've never seen or heard before, but I was working in an office and someone I was supposed to have meeting with, and then they stuck a sticky note on my computer on my desk that said that. And when I wasn't at my desk at the time, so when I came back and saw that sticker, I felt so offended because, you know, I looked at it and the first thing that came to my mind is that person was calling me a Barbie. and I'm like, you know, from my knowledge at that time, Barbie is a nice, beautiful doll, but also, you know, it means that you're kind of dumb or you look good, but you're not really smart, you know, that type of thing. So I'm like, you know, I really didn't know why that person thought I was a Barbie. So when they came back and I said, you know, this is not nice. Why are you calling me Barbie? And they said, when did I call you Barbie? I said, you just stuck a sticky note on my computer. What do you mean? He's like, no, means be right back. So I'm like, oh, like, well, how would I know? Like, you know, where do you find translation for that somewhere? This is the next one, which, you know, I got it in a text message one time, you know, and then all I asked, you know, was like between what? And they say, what do you mean between what? I said, well, you said between. And apparently it was by the way. So that's another thing that just did not make any sense to me. And then this is the funniest one ever. Because, you know, in the culture that I'm coming from, the only abbreviation we probably use is PM, AM, Mr., Mrs., Doctor, you know, that kind of abbreviation. So when I came here, it didn't really take that long to be familiar with the BS, or with the, I mean, familiar with the abbreviation of BS. So then, you know, I knew the bad one, what it means, BS. But then when I had to apply for a job and it was in an application, that just threw me off, because, and you know, they wanted me to level, my education, if it's a BS education or if it's a BA. And I wasn't sure what BS meant because it was missing the C. If there was a C there, I probably would have guessed, Bachelor of Science, but it only had BS and BA. And I couldn't know which one was worse than the other. So I really couldn't even finish filling out that application because I was too scared that I may get in trouble. The other incident that happened with this abbreviation is that I was working at the time at Walgreens, and then my manager gave me the list of that day to do, and I was going through every item in the list, but then when I came to where she came to check and I hadn't gotten to everything on the list, so she said, well, let me see what you did. So I handed her the list. She looked at the list and then she said, well, you didn't finish your BS? And I'm like, I just didn't know what to say. And I'm like, I just was looking for an answer, and I thought she's angry with me. I thought I'm gonna get fired that day. And she said, do you know what I'm talking about? And I said, well, I'm really sorry, but I don't know which BS you're talking about. And she got all offended, even though she was the one that said you didn't finish the BS. And she said, it's on your list. And she said, I put it here. I said, you need to do the bottom shelves. That's why I put to do the BS. And I said, well, how would I know which BS people mean? If it's a bottom shelf, it's a bullshit, if it's, so I'm like, I'm really sorry. I thought, you were angry at me. So that's with the abbreviation. There was one, which I wasn't sure if I can share or not, but I worked in a clinical setting. And then one day after I was done with the patient, the nurse told me, just make sure to finish your comments. And I said, I will. And she said, and add FU. And I'm like, I'm sorry? And she said, I said, what do you mean add FU to the patient notes? Like, well, what did the patient do? And she said, no, I don't mean it that way. F/U means follow up. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense now because, I didn't know why I would be using profanities with patients who did not do anything wrong. All right. Is everybody doing okay?
Everyone's hoping to be able to see you. We can't.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that, why is your camera not working? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Okay, then we'll go without.
Okay. Are people okay listening to me and not seeing me, or would you prefer to see me? You can unmute yourself. I'm not good with sign language, so. You okay just listening and not seeing me? Okay, all right, so we'll move on then. Okay, so now that we're gonna start with the idioms, those two cartoonist pictures really show how I felt many times when people used idioms, especially if we were in a very serious meeting, like when I'm in a board meeting or executive board meeting, something that is very serious and we're making some really serious decisions, and people use idioms and I have no idea what they mean. And then I have to share my opinion on things. So, so let's start. So one time someone said, well, you know, they go cold turkey. And I'm like, what do you mean cold turkey? And I just kept thinking, if someone like cold turkey, they go cold turkey, like did they get frozen in the ice, like a frozen turkey? Like what happened to them? Or did they go calling a turkey? Like, you know, they went hunting? I just had no idea. I just kept guessing. And I had to wait, you know, till that person finished their conversation and ask, so what did you really mean by go cold turkey? And they explained that, you know, it's when someone suddenly they quit something, but they go back to it, or they relapse. And here is an interesting one where, you know, one time people said, okay, how about we go out for lunch? And I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And they said, well, you know, we'll go Dutch. And the instant thing that came to my mind is like, you know, so we have to dress like Dutch and like go for lunch. But then, you know, I had to ask, like, what do you mean we're gonna go Dutch? And then they said, oh, means everyone is gonna pay for their own meal. And I said, oh, you mean English pocket? And then they said, well, what is English pocket? And I said, well, you know, you go out and everybody, they just pocket their own, you know, they pay out of their own pocket for their own meal. And now this one was very interesting to me because, you know, I heard it that, you know, someone received a kickback. And when you receive a kickback, you know, you either get kicked at the back of the line or you get kicked in the back. That, you know, that's what would make sense, you know, from hearing it. But apparently it just meant something completely different. And here is spill the beans. And then spill the, you know, when someone said, oof, you just spilled the beans. And I'm like, well, like spilling the beans, I just never heard of anything like that. And the only thing came to my head is like literal meaning of it, which is I spilled someone's beans on the floor, or maybe when I was in the lunchroom by accident. And then people who know me very well, they know that I eat my dessert before my food, before my meal. So, you know, people always would tell me, oh, so you have a sweet tooth. And I would say, well, I have 9 of them. And they don't understand what I mean, because I thought having a sweet tooth means you have a cavity on your tooth, or you have a tooth with a cavity. So I said, no, I have actually 9 cavities. So I have 9 fillings in my teeth. So it's not just one tooth, it's 9 of them. And down to earth, this one really surprised me, because we were talking to someone, and then when that person left, you know, everybody was saying, oh, you know, that person is really nice and so down to earth. And I'm like, well, that person was just here. When did they go under the earth? Or like what happened to them? They just was here, like, you know, half an hour ago or an hour ago. And I thought when they say they're down to earth, like they went under the earth. And this one, as you see, nips something in the bud, and I literally just I could not hear that D. And nip it for me almost meant like slapping or smacking someone in the butt. And I thought, well, how inappropriate to use something like this, you know, in a professional meeting. But then, you know, when I spoke with whoever coworker that was sharing the office with me, said it's a bud, and nipping, it's not really slapping or smacking. It's like clipping, almost like clipping the bud, like a flower bud. So after all that explanation, then it made sense to me what they said. And here is another very funny one, because, you know, people use this a lot. Because they say, you know, people need to stop beating around the bush. And the first time I heard it, I actually was so happy, because I said, oh, so people in America, they pee behind the bush just like sometimes we do in Africa. But apparently it wasn't peeing behind the bush, it was beating around the bush. So you can only imagine that when I've actually used it, I used it the wrong way, and I got completely a different reaction from people when I used it as peeing behind the bush. And this one, I heard a couple of times, and all I can think about it when people used it as the elephant in the room, I just start looking around and see who was that fat person in the room that they were talking about. But it wasn't really the fat person, it meant something completely different. Is everybody following along? Okay. All right. Well, pardon my French, as I've used it already. But the first time I heard this, I'm like, oh, I guess a lot of Americans here, they do speak French. But the French they speak is not really the French I thought it was. So that kind of made me think a few times. So what's the relationship between French and using profanity, which I'm still trying to figure out what the relationship is. So if anyone knows, please feel free to share, because I still don't know what's the relationship between French and profanities in America. Anybody knows? Anybody can guess? I don't know. Mary, do you know anything?
I'll say something. I think
Yes.
it's just a euphemism. Like when you're speaking profanity, it's like you're speaking another language. So that would be my wild guess.
Okay.
That it's French. By saying French, it's just like a euphemism for profanity. I don't know. What do you think? Anybody?
And that would make sense. Anybody else have any other guesses?
I'd have to look back. I'd have to look back in a book of idioms and see what the history of it is, and it would probably be a story behind it, maybe.
Okay. Well, I have something to share with you, and I hope Mike is okay to share the idiom, the relationship between the idiom of a rule of thumb and what it's all about. So you go ahead, Mike, if you're okay talking about it.
You want to mute yourself? Or?
Sure.
And I guess I could stand corrected, but from what I heard, and it's not a very good story at all, but that in some ancient civilization, basically men were allowed to beat, I don't know if it was their wives or their children, as long as the stick wasn't bigger than their thumb. So that's where the idea of rule of thumb came from. It's not something that I would even use that phrase anymore, knowing that origin, but that's what I've heard, and I see a couple of people nodding, so I think that might be the correct one. Thankfully, I hadn't thought about it for a while until Cecile brought up that as an example.
Thank you, Mike. And I did not pick that idiom to talk about this time. So, but I heard it, I would say multiple times, but the way I understood that idiom is that, when people say a rule of thumb, like something, it's kind of like the given way of doing something properly. And that what the rule of thumb is. But now that I understand what it means, I don't think I'm comfortable either using it. So thank you, Mike. And now we're gonna move to the Arabic idioms. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn it around. So I'm gonna say what the idiom in Arabic is, and if you know the synonym of it in English, then you unmute yourself and you tell me. So we say the monkey in his mother's eyes is a gazelle. And what it really means is when you're a mom, it doesn't matter if your son is, fat or skinny, tall or short, or, if they're not, if he's not handsome, if she's not beautiful, they still gonna look to you like they are the most beautiful creature in the world. And no matter what they do, they still, you're always gonna be biased toward your children. So that's where the idiom comes from. So do you have something similar like this in English? So I see Faye is not.
The apple of his mother's eye.
Okay, Mary and Faye, you have.
Sorry. That's probably what I would have said, that yes, we do have a similar idiom. It's just really fun to hear the same idea is from another language or culture.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you.
So Mary, can you say one more time?
The apple of his mother's eye.
The apple of his mother's eye. Okay. All right. So thank you, Mary and Faye. And here is another one. And this is a very funny one because it's called Where's Your Ear, Joaha. And Joaha is an Arabian comedy character that we use all the times if you want to talk about something that happens, or like a funny character. I don't know if you have similar one in English, but this Joaha is always struggling. So it's when we say where is your ear, Joaha. So Joaha, as you can see in the picture, he's going all around and up behind his head to reach to his ear. And it really means, when you ask someone like, like, where is your assignment? And they just say, well, yesterday after I left work, I had to drop my son, and then I had a flat tire. And so they go a long way to just tell you that they didn't really do their assignment. So that's called where's your ear, Joaha, like, kind of cut to the chase, or cut the chase, or how do you say it? Cut to the chase. Cut to the chase. Okay. So that's what we use when we say, or when I tell my husband, I'll meet you somewhere and it should take you 7 minutes. So when he shows up 20 minutes later, And then I'll say, oh, you took Joha's way to come to the place. So that's how it's used sometimes. So besides cut to the chase, are there any other idioms that sound as familiar as this one?
I would say he took the scenic route.
Yes. Yeah, I heard that one before. And I heard it, I would say exactly maybe 3-4 years ago. And I had no idea what it meant. So I had to ask Derek, my husband, to explain it to me. Any other, so the scenic route, cut to the chase, anything else?
Don't beat around the bush.
Okay, don't beat around. Yep. So we got
Well, and
3.
I think also just, you're taking the long way around.
Yeah, taking the long way around. Yep.
Taking the long way around.
I heard one, but I don't know if I'm gonna say it the right way. I hope I'm not using profanity or using French. It's when you say someone is pussyfooting or pussyfoot.
Okay, we lost you.
Okay. Am I saying it the right way? When someone is, what is it called?
You mean pussyfooting around?
Pussyfooting around, yeah. So I had no idea what that meant before, and I wasn't sure, like, if that using profanity, and I wasn't sure if that's actually meant something or these are just 2 random words put together. I just had no idea what that meant. We'll move to the next one. And this one, it says, a donkey is a donkey, even if he walked amongst horses. And in Arabic, it does not sound as insulting as it sounds here, where it says, it's like, if you are dumb and stubborn, walking amongst smartest does not change who you are. You're still gonna be dumb and stubborn. So, but we say, if you're a donkey and you're running along with the horses, that's not gonna change. You're still gonna be a donkey, gonna stick out like a donkey. So, which also it says more about, it's when you're dumb or when you're not smart, it doesn't matter how much you dress up and, look all nice, once you open your mouth, we're gonna know exactly how smart you are. So is there anything similar to this in English?
I'm trying to think of the full phrase, but it's better to be thought stupid than to open your mouth and prove it. That's a really poor adaptation of it, but better to be presumed stupid than to open your mouth and prove it, something like that.
Anybody else? Mary, you were saying something. No?
Might be, don't judge a book by its cover.
Was
I don't
that grammar?
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes.
That's similar. It's not quite the same, but.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Should we move on to the next one, or should I give you some time to scratch your head and? All right, let's move on. So this one, it says, hit me and howled and rushed first to cry foul. And as you can see, the pictures just explains it, so if 2 people are arguing or fighting And then the one who's at fault, they go and they cry or they complain about the other person, even though it's their fault. So, you know, as you can see on the picture on the left, the guy in the black suit smacked the other guy, and then he went to Uncle Sam and cried that it was the other person's fault, that the other person beat him. Or as you can see, the two babies, like the one with the boxing gloves actually hit the other one, but he was running, crying to say that it was the other one that beat him. So anything similar to this in English? No?
Wouldn't just the phrase crying foul be that? Because I've heard of people crying foul and
I think it could.
It could, crying foul. Yeah. Okay. I'm really getting you thinking today, huh?
yeah.
Okay. So here is accompany the prayer and you'll pray, accompany the singer and you'll sing. And actually the literal translation of the idiom, it says, if you are around certain people for 40 days, you become one of them. So that's what it says. So, you know, it says here, if you accompany a group, tribe, people for 40 days, you will be part of them or like them. It means like you start to pick up their habits and, you know, whatever they do. As you see in the picture, all the kids are watching, and then now the cat thinks that she has to do the same. So anything similar to this in English? Mike, you said something.
Yep. The one that came closest for me was, when in Rome, do as the Romans do.
Oh.
But there's a little variation on that because that's more of an intentional changing of behavior to match the folks around you.
And they're slightly similar, could be walk a mile in someone's shoes, kind of tangentially related to that.
Yeah.
Understand them.
I think of two things. One is when visiting in Holland, because we spoke English and they spoke Dutch, the one daughter knew English, and she was an English teacher in the school, and was asked if she'd been around Americans because she wasn't speaking English anymore. She was speaking American. And that was the first I knew that there was a difference between English and American. The second one that I think about is if you are with people with certain behaviors, after a period of time, you'll take those on. For example, if someone is pretty negative most of the time, it tends to carry over a period of time that you become more negative as well.
I guess the other one that I thought of was birds of a feather flock together. But again, that's a slight variation on the theme too. That's where you kind of seek out people who have similar attitudes or personalities as you do.
Okay. I'm quite impressed. For every one idiom, I get 3 or 4. I'm sure learning more. Okay, so here, this is a unique one because it says, what explains to the ox that I'm a doctor, which means you sometimes don't know what's good for you, especially when you're angry and stubborn. So, you know, so it's almost like, you know, I'm trying to explain to someone what's good for them, you know, but if they're as stubborn as an ox, they will never get it. So, you have something similar in English?
I feel like a variation of it, and it's not like right on, could be like when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
Yes. Okay.
And I might say something like, you wouldn't know a good deal if it hit you in the head. Or some variation of that.
Or in the nose or in the eye.
Okay. So, anybody has any more idioms that may sound the same? Okay. Let's move on. In this one, it says, if I'm a prince and you're a prince, then who will drive the donkey? And it's pretty much saying, you know, if we're both too privileged to work or to do the hard work, or, you know, then who will get the labor done for us to enjoy it? Like, you know, it's pretty much if I'm saying I'm too good to do this kind of work, or I'm like, you know, my education or my class, you know, I'm not gonna do this, and someone else would say, well, I'm too, you know, I got so many degrees to do such a basic job or something like that. So then the job is not done. So what would be similar to this in English?
Would it
Well,
be
go ahead.
it'd be something like there's too many cooks in the kitchen?
Too many crooks in the kitchen?
Cooks.
Cooks.
Cooks,
Too many-
cooks, not crooks. Okay.
Not crooks. Too many cooks in the
Because
kitchen.
that would be me. If there is many crooks in the kitchen, that would be me, myself, and I. All of us in the kitchen.
This one has, unfortunately, some racist tones to it, but too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Okay.
That would be pretty close.
Yeah.
Too many bosses, not enough workers.
Okay. The one Sandra had shared, I have a similar one in Arabic where we say, two captains in a ship sinks.
Okay. That would be pretty close to that.
Yeah. Which I heard one time someone says, you know, if you come to my house, you take your gloves off, or you don't wear the gloves, or something like, you don't have to act like you're royal when you come to my house, or something like this. Is there anything like that in English? No? Yes? Okay. So let's move to the next one. And this one actually, I have a short video that I want to show you that some of the body gestures or hand gestures that we use, and sometimes when we use them, you know, people have no idea what it means or what we're trying to say, you know. So I'm gonna share the video. And I'm gonna start it and then stop to see if you actually can hear it or not, okay?
And today we're going to be talking about
Can you hear it? Can all of you hear it?
number one, snake twist. First, a demonstration.
Can it be a little louder?
Okay.
This means shino. What? What are you trying to say here? And of course, the stronger the what, the stronger the what. This one is the Joaha. First, you must take all the energy in your body. Take your hand and reach up to the heavens. Squeeze your fingers and pull down. Demonstration time. Go, Ed, go! But in real life, you're probably just gonna go. And of course, the harder you pull, the more you're telling someone, wait. Oh, and by the way, if a mother does this, see what's gonna happen to you.
Can you all hear it or no?
Third, the four-finger stab. Now,
Not
typically,
very good.
pointing a finger at someone is rude.
Could be a little louder maybe for me.
Louder.
A little bit louder. Here we can try.
This brightness, okay, yes, doesn't go up any. Yeah, because it's hard to hear.
Oops.
Yeah. I tried to get the volume, but that didn't work, so, because the volume was,
Think about it. Let's get started. Number one, snake twist. First, a
get out of the
demonstration.
way. So I can't get the volume control underneath it.
What? What are you trying to say here? And of course, the stronger the what.
Sorry, we couldn't get it, the volume higher than that, so.
First, you must take all the energy in your body. Take your hand and reach up to the heavens. Squeeze your fingers and pull down. Demonstration time. Go, Ed, go! But in real life, you're probably just gonna go. And of course, the harder you pull, the more you're telling someone, wait. Oh, and by the way, if a mother does this, wait and see what's gonna happen to you. Third, the four-finger stab. Now, typically in our culture, pointing a finger at someone is rude. I think it's rude in most cultures. That's why when you want to point at something or you want someone to look, you'll go ahead and now, just like other hand gestures, of course, the sharper you point, the more you want someone to take a look at. Just one. Now, this one is a measurement system. Who needs centimeters and inches when you've got it? Typically in our culture, when we're trying to describe how big or how long something is, we'll either say
Just a minute. Let this thing move.
oh, dude, you should have seen it. It's that big. Oh, and by the way, make sure that when
No, I can't get the,
It's okay.
it's probably our system here at the
Yeah.
office.
Sorry about that. Let me see. Close here. All right. Oh no, what did I do now? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have real strong internet service here, so.
All right. So I'll just play the last part.
Gary here, and today we're going to be talking.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
Finally,
Oh, here, you missed. He's talking about how in Arab culture, we use the hand to measure things. So we talk about if something is small, it's like
Typically in our culture, when we're trying to describe how big or how long something is, we will either say
as tiny as the finger or as big as a whole arm. What's that, Mary? Can you unmute? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Number one was like a twist of the snake or something. What was that?
Okay, so I'll go back. All right. So.
when Mr. Q, your friendly neighborhood guitar here, and today we're going to be talking about
So.
Number one, a snake twist. First.
Oh, the snake with a twist. What is that?
That means when we're saying like, what is that? And here, let me see. I thought I just saw how I can. Let me see here. Start video. All right. Now you can see me.
Oh, see
I
you.
figured it out, Mike. Woo-hoo. So the way we do it is we say like, wait, or sorry, not the wait, when we say what's wrong, or like what is it? Like, what is it? So he's just doing it in a dramatic way to make it look all funny. Like, what is it? Like, what is that? Like, what's going on? Here, people, let me see, let me get this a little bit. People say like, what is that? Or, you use your shoulder, or, you use your hands like you don't know what that is, or like what's happening, something like that. But we say one hand and we just say like, what is that? Or what's happening, or what's going on? So that's pretty much what he's trying to explain. But he's just using dramatic way to make it more funny. And we'll move to the next one. Nope, not the next slide, sorry. Okay. Why is the computer is not cooperating? Okay, here we go.
Harry here, and today we're going to be talking about. Let's get started. Number one, a snake twist. First, a demonstration. This is Shu. What? What are you trying to say here? And of course, the stronger the what, the stronger the what. This one is the first, you must take all the energy in your body. Take your hand and reach up to the heavens. Squeeze your fingers and pull down.
And this one, you're probably familiar with, with the Italian culture, how they always, use their fingers and like Mamma Mia, or, some beautiful or stuff like that. So we use the same thing. We just say, just wait, like be patient, or, just wait. But we also use it sometimes when you get really angry and you want to get back to someone, you just say, just wait. Like, just wait, I'm going to get back to you, or I'm going to get back at you. So that's, and when you want to tell, when people are fighting, or someone is like talking, and you want to calm them down, and you want to say, well, just wait. We always say, well, just wait, or just wait, or, and the stronger it is, the more you're trying to tell, because you can't talk if that person is just talking, or arguing, and you want to tell them, just wait, or, be patient. So that's what this means.
Demonstration time. Go, let go! But in real life, you're probably just going to go. And of course, the harder you pull, the more you're telling someone, wait. Oh, and by the way, if a mother does this, wait and see what's going to happen to you. Third, the four-finger stab. Now, typically in our culture, pointing a finger at someone is rude. It's rude in most cultures. That's why when you want to point at something or you want someone to look, you'll go ahead and now, just like other hand gestures, of course, the sharper you point, the more you want someone to take a look at.
So I'm going to explain this because I know when we lived overseas, my husband used to say, like, what is it with the hands? Like, why people there are just using their hands for everything? And, you know, it's just part of the language. So like he mentioned, in our language, using the finger is very insulting. And I remember when I first moved to the States, when people, if I'm standing in line or if I'm somewhere and someone will do the finger to me, it was like, oh, what are they trying to say? Or like, you know, it's, what's the word, Mike?
Insulting?
Insulting or not disintegrating. I mean, it's like looking down on someone, you know? So in our culture, when you want to call someone, you'll say, come. So it's with the whole hand, you know, say, come here, you know, like, yeah, come right here. But we never use the one finger. And you want to point at something, we don't, like, if I have to show someone what's in the paper, I don't say, look here. We always say, look. So we use the four fingers, as he's saying, we say, well, look here, or look at this, or, you know, like if I want to give directions, I won't say go that way. I'll say go that way, turn left, or, you know, turn right. So we use the whole hand because, you know, we always use the fingers, like, you know, when you're threatening something, or also for insulting, like, you know, who do you think you are? Or, you know, so always using the finger. It's, you know, we prefer not to use it and avoid as much as possible using it.
Just look. Now, this one is a measurement system. Who needs centimeters and inches when you've got it? Typically in our culture, when we're trying to describe how big or how long something is, we'll either say it's
So here he's talking about how we use our hands to measure things. So, you know, we say it was like this small, you know, and we're using like the parts of the fingers, and we say, you know, it's like this small, or it's like, you know, like this big. You know, if you say, I've seen let's see, a mosquito that this size, or, you know, the I don't know, the cockroach was like this small or this small. So, you know, we use the finger. And then if you want to say, oh, that, let's say, I've seen a spider that was this big, like this big, you know, like you use the whole, or you're going to say, like the snow was this high, you know? So you use foot or yards or stuff like that. You always use, like, you know, both of your hands here when you're measuring, or you use both fingers to measure like how small or how big stuff. But we use the finger where it's this small, this small, this small finger, tall, or this one, which is, I think it's almost as big as like 10 centimeters, but we say, you know, it was like this big, or we say it was, the steak was like this big. And we also use the arm, you know, if it's something so big, we use like the whole arm to explain the size of how big. But he's also saying that when we use like this, because he was saying that if you close your fist, that means that's a profanity. That's like using, what do you call it? Like cursing at someone. Are you all following or, okay, okay. Just checking.
Oh, Joe, you should have seen it. It's that big. Oh, and by the way, make sure that when you are describing that, you don't turn it into this. That's totally different in other cultures. Not the same as our culture, but finally, this one is the blow dart. Usage of this hand gesture involves your mouth. So what you have to do is hold your hand in this position and blow your hand away. Basically, this is used to describe someone who probably doesn't know what they're talking about or what they're doing. Just doesn't know it. You know nothing.
And he's saying that when we use our fingers like this, or the whole, like all 5 fingers, and we just say, with and you blow air out of your mouth, means like this person doesn't know anything. Or they say, did you understand? And you say, means nothing. Or it's like this, if they say, well, so-and-so was talking about all this stuff, and he really seemed, or she really seems to be very knowledgeable. And we say, means no, they don't know anything, or they're, and I think sometimes here you use this, like it just went over your head or something, like, so that's equivalent to it. Anybody has any questions? Any addition, any comment? Nope. Okay, we'll finish this and then I'll take questions.
What's the view? I don't know. All right, guys. So I hope that you enjoyed these 5.
So that's the video, and I was trying my best this time to not make it as lengthy as last time. So that pretty much was some of the slides of, you know, the idioms and abbreviation, and some American, some Arabic, and some idioms that has similar meanings to American ones. But I mean, I had over 140 some idioms, and I listened to Mike this time, and I kept it just at a dozen of them. So people are not falling asleep, and I'm not boring you out of your heads in the presentation. So does anyone have any question, any comments?
Would you say that like idioms, hand gestures, abbreviations, are they used more in America than in Arabic culture, or what's your opinion on that?
They are used equally, like equally the same. But you know, today, by the way, I'm not marketing myself. I'm not using this for publicity, but I had KEYC a call this morning because they wanted to get some information about this event. And that was actually a question that they asked me. Plus, they also asked if they think if people now are using more idioms than before. And I said, now, because I understand a lot of them and I can recognize them, I can see them more now. So it feels like people are using them more now. But, you know, it could have been the same when I first moved here. It's just I didn't know what they were saying or what they meant. But I do see it all the time. And I think also using idioms, they differ where you are and what kind of idioms people use when you're in an office setting versus when you're, let's say, at a construction site, for example. So the idioms are all different, but in our culture, most people that use idioms are older people. So when you run into someone and between every two sentences they're using an idiom, people always would say, "Oh, you must be raised by your grandma," because that's what typically grandmas use. You know, the idioms where we call it idiom. We call them wisdoms. You know. Well, idiom, mainly we don't have something called idiom in Arabic, but we call them wisdoms.
I think certainly more people are using abbreviations than ever before, especially with texting. And the younger people use all these abbreviations when they text, and I don't even know what they mean. So I think, you know, abbreviations in texting is really skyrocketed.
Yeah, and I commented on this on the interview because I said, for me, the part that was more frustrating than understanding the idioms is the abbreviation, because the idioms, at least, you know, you can ask someone about it. I mean, you can remember it and you can ask someone about it, or I mean, you can type it, you can use your Google Translate sometimes to understand what it means. But with abbreviation, I mean, these are just letters, so they can mean so many different things. So I said, for me, this is way more frustrating than the idioms. So I said, for me, as an advice for people who are working with immigrants, with refugees, or even like I consider myself like I spoke the language fluently, but then, you know, I went to Catholic school, I learned English, but I learned the grammar, the vocabulary, the British way. And when I came here, like I said, the abbreviations that I was familiar with were very, very few, and you know, they were very common, like anybody that spoke English knew it. But when I came here, the different abbreviation was just a challenge for me to figure out what they meant, and how it could be the same exact abbreviation but in a different setting meant different things.
I think I think a lot of us find that with because we didn't grow up with texting and using those abbreviations, and they use them in different contexts. They might use the same abbreviation, but it means something else in a different setting. And then you've got to stop and figure that out. It doesn't, I guess they do it to save time, but a lot of times it doesn't save time, because you need to figure out what they mean in that particular context.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What I appreciated about your presentation, Cecile, is you started out with American idioms, and then you brought in your culture. And what I found interesting is each culture must have their own idioms, and that you brought that out in this presentation, and I hadn't thought about that before.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the one who should take credit for that is Mike, because he said when we were putting this presentation together and when we were like brainstorming together, he said, you know, I really enjoyed when you used, you know, the Arabic idioms, because, you know, I learned something new. You know, it was challenging for me. It it was very interesting, which now when I'm doing the presentation, it made me think, what if I was just using the Arabic idioms and I just thought that everybody knew what I was talking about? And it's kind of, I don't remember who said, being in someone's shoes. It's kind of like the similar thing. Like if I were just to, be talking with someone and then casually throw an Arabic idiom there and say, you know what I mean? And they probably have no idea what I actually meant. So thanks to Mike.
Well, that was interesting too, because Cecile showed me a website that had about 96 different idioms in there, and we were up to 50 or 60, and I found myself using other idioms to help define what a certain idiom meant, and that really didn't make much sense at all.
And anybody else have any questions, any comment?
So, Cecile, I'd like to ask, does your culture use abbreviations like the U.S. does? Because I agree with what other people are saying. It seems like we're abbreviating everything. And like on your application, if you have a BA or a BS, I'm not sure when it shifted that they couldn't spell out Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science, or it was a few years back, it took me a little while to figure out what POTUS was.
POTUS, yeah.
The abbreviation for President of the United States. It's like, well, when did that happen that I didn't pick up on that? And it started appearing in the newspapers and different things. So we seem to be using more abbreviations or initials for things. Does your culture use abbreviations as well?
No. And like I said, in Arabic, even the ones that we use are, D for doctor, or we use E for like an engineer, for example. If you the same way where you put DR dot and then the name of the doctor, we just put D and dot and then a slash and then the name of the person, and we're just kind of saying what the title of that person. But even Mr. and Mrs. and all that stuff, it's all in full, like the full word, no abbreviation.
And Sandra, the first time I heard the phrase POTUS was on the West Wing TV show. And of course, that was the inside, behind the scenes kind of thing. And I think that leads into another thing that we have a lot of in our society, which is jargon. People use it because people within that industry know what they mean, but then they switch to another audience and people are completely confused. Kind of like BS for bottom shelf as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's one of like that meant something to her in that setting, but it did not mean that to me.
Yeah, and I remember when I went to high school, even the idioms that we were taught were the English idioms. Like, they were, I think, 10 of them that we had to know by heart. And we were, tested on, where, it's as easy as ABC or as easy as a pie. And I remember the first time I said it's as easy as pie, my Grandma Sue said, have you ever made a pie? Because making pies is not really easy. So it's not really as easy as a pie. And we use, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to do it by hook or by a crook. I'm going to get it done. And, that's just how we learn. And when I remember the first time I used it, people had no idea what that meant. And the look in their face, it just seemed like I'm going to, do it violently, if I'm going to use a hook, or if I'm, go crook about it and just get it done. But that's not really what it meant. But I think here, people would say, I'm by all means, you know, I'll get it done. So
American.
and I also wanted to say there are so many other idioms that are exactly exactly the same. The difference is either a color or a name or a different animal. Like, you know, here you say someone is born with a silver spoon, and we say, you know, they're born with a golden spoon in their mouth. So you use silver, we use gold, you know, potato, potato, tomato, tomato, I guess. But yeah, I mean, like Mike said, there just in one sheet, I had 96 different idioms, and he said, I hope you're not using all 96. I said, I can't, and he said, no, you only pick a dozen, and you just use those dozen, and that's it. So, so I have like 30 more minutes. I can use more idioms, or you can tell me more idioms. Like, I remember there were some idioms when I was talking with Mike, he said, geez, those idioms are so old, people don't use them anymore. Like pony up money, or pony up money, or ante up money.
Yeah.
Ante up.
Pony up. Pay.
Pay up.
Yeah, pay it up.
Yeah.
Pony up money.
Pony up. Okay. One of the idioms that for me seemed very interesting was when someone said, I want to pick your brain. And, and I got terrified because I wasn't sure how they're gonna pick my brain. But I said, let me just go along, and if it gets physical, then I'll call for help.
That's a good one.
And I remember one time someone used jump on the bandwagon.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought jump on a bandwagon means that wagon is banned, like it's empty, it's banned, it's all, it's like isolated, it's being thrown somewhere, and someone is just gonna jump on it and use it. But I think it meant something different.
Yeah.
It means something different than that, right?
Yes. it does.
Joining in with
Okay.
an
With the
idea.
popular people.
Okay. So it's not jumping on an empty wagon. Okay.
No.
And then shoot the breeze.
Yeah.
I hear people, they shoot different stuff, but, or I mean, they use different stuff. But I think the proper way to use it is shoot the breeze, right? Which I thought people just take their loaded guns and they just go by the water somewhere and they just go bang, 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 shooting the breeze. But I got, you know, like I said, it got clarified for me later. So,
Visiting.
yeah. Which I think shooting the breeze and what is that one with the smoke? Do you remember, Mike?
I'm trying to remember. Blowing smoke up there.
Blowing smoke. Is that what it was? Okay.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then throw a hissy fit.
Oh, hissy fit. Yeah.
So throw a hissy fit. I don't know. For some reason, when I heard the first time, I just, the immediate understanding or picture I got is someone throwing a hissing cat, a kid, but it wasn't a hissing kid. It was a hissy fit. But I just thought, like, you know, when a cat gets angry and wants to scratch you and it goes like, so I thought like a hissy fit or a hissy kid. That's how I kind of pictured it, what a hissy fit would mean.
I think sometimes in work settings, Cecile, people say we all have to get on the bus or get on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. Which that reminds me about how Americans specifically use the word hit in so many ways, that you know they tell you hit the road, hit the brakes, hit the ground running. What else do you hit?
Hit the skids. You hit the
Don't hit the
skids.
kids here. You don't hit the kids here. You're not allowed.
No, skids,
Yes.
Kids.
not kids.
Not kids. Okay.
No. Well, the one you mentioned, Cecile, earlier was you chop down a tree and then you chop up the wood.
Yeah, see that I still not getting it. So the tree is standing up. So you chop it down, and then you chop it up. So how do you chop it down and then you chop it up? It just, these two things mean like completely opposite things. Like, you know, you cut it up or you cut it down, or you cut it up and you chop it down. So what's the difference? Why when you cut it up, and when you chop it, you're chopping it down? Cutting and chopping are the same thing.
Good point. Really good point.
So
I don't have an answer for you, Cecile.
I know. I'm sure if I ask Google, I don't think Google will have an answer for me either.
No. It's crazy American language.
So I'd be interested in hearing a couple more idioms from your culture, if you can think of a couple more.
Yes. What I will do is maybe when we send this link out, I can add some videos. Or if you want, if you like this presentation, we can continue with idioms and abbreviation. And maybe next time what I can talk about more is Arab idioms versus English idioms. Or, you know, like I said, I'm always open for topics, and whatever topic that would come to me, I would always, what you call it here, kind of do a comparison, or do the devil advocate, where I can show it what it is, like what it means to me being here as an immigrant in America versus how I would perceive it if I was in Sudan, or how people in Sudan would perceive it, or if I wasn't accustomed to the US culture, aware of it, how it's kind of like playing it on both sides. So if you have any topics that you would like to know, or you would like me to present about, I'm open for that too.
It's especially, well, it's all interesting, but it's especially helpful to know those specific things that, like you were saying about don't point with your fingers.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, things that would be actually offensive to people. You know, for us that I don't know, we might use a gesture and we don't even think about it. And, you know, just across cultures, you don't want to be, you know, insulting somebody completely without even knowing you've done it, you know, until you see the look on their face. So this is good to know.
Yes, and you know, you just reminded me of a very important point, and I'm so glad you brought this now, because I wanted, and Grandma Sue and Annette can tell me, because I've told them this when I first moved with them, is I said, Faye, in my culture, out of politeness, if you're older than me, male specifically, but if you're older than me, whenever you're talking to me, I'm always gonna be looking down. And that's out of respect. Because when you're talking to me, like if you were my teacher, if you were my aunt, if you were let's say my grandma or even my mom. So whenever you're talking to me, you're older than me. Anytime you talk to me, I'm expected to be looking down as of respect of your age, respect also of the relationship, that if you're my aunt, if you're my mom, my grandma, my teacher. So then, when I came here, even my brother, when he would talk to me, my older brother, whenever he would talk to me, I would look down or look away, and he will say, look at me, I'm talking to you. And I said, I know you're talking to me. I can hear you. You're saying this, and that. And he said, yeah, but I'm your face is looking away. And I said, well, I don't have to look on your face. I don't hear you with my face. I hear you with my ear. So that's one of the things. And a lot of people, when I moved to Mankato, and when I was working at the YWCA, talking about immigrants and refugees and the cross-cultural things that immigrants are struggling with. And I spoke about body language, like, if you're talking to a woman and she's looking down or she's looking away, that doesn't mean she's not paying attention. It just means she's doing that out of respect. While here it's the complete opposite. If you're not looking at me, if you're not looking at my face, or if you're not looking at me, I just immediately think it's this, you're being disrespectful.
Disrespect. Yeah.
And the other thing was nodding. Like, when you're talking to me, I say like this, and I mean, like, I'm attentive. Like, yes, I agree with you. I'm like 100% agreeing with you. But some people told me that when they see people doing that, they think like, okay, come on, like, cut, get to the point, cut the chase. Yeah. cut to the chase, And I said, no, that's completely the opposite. I'm just saying, yes, I agree with you. Yep, that's absolutely right. So these are all things, but that, like I said, we use, and that's why one of the things I said, this time is exceptionally or especially hard for me, because I use my body, my hands, my face expression to say or to deliver the message faster, and it's easier for me. So now that I have to do stuff virtually and I have to do many meetings on the phone, I feel like, almost crippled. Like, it's not exactly how I want people to perceive it. That's not how I want them to understand it. And, I express myself better when I'm talking to the person versus where I have, send an email or, just or write something or post something, or, because that for me is extra challenging as far as communication.
I think that's something that I know it's something I've found with writing more, with whether it's emails or texting or Facebook, there's more of a chance people are going to take what you said in a different way than you meant it.
Yes.
Yep, and I'm going to take this way and say that Cecile has once again gone up until the end of the time. So, so I'm going to be the mean man and step in and say that that we want to thank you all for coming. And if we can give a virtual applause for Cecile for her presentation, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Cecile, any last words?
I'll try my best, Faye, next time to add more videos to explain more about the hand gestures and what they mean in different cultures. And I thank you all for your input and your feedback, and especially for attending.